Defining the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. My name is Ebony Tyson, also known as Tendegile Twala. This has been powerful. I mean, we could do this all day. I could do this all day. But the last question for everyone is, or in that part and in this segment, I would say, is why do you think a lot of Black Americans and Africans have not been able to work with each other now? And I'm not saying none have, but why do you think a lot of them haven't? So I'll just start off with my opinion. So for some people, I think that it's the lack of kindness and allowing the world to pit hatred and judgment toward each other. So I feel like we're not giving ourselves that room, like you were saying, in terms of that room for grace. You know, like, it's okay if you don't know it all, you know, but let's talk about it. And again, we have other people telling us who we should love, who we should hate, you know, even toward ourselves. So I think that's a big issue. And also lacking that emotional maturity and availability and those loving conversations. Some of us don't even know how to articulate how we're feeling or how to even start that conversation, where to even start, and who to even go to have that conversation. And also that lack of encouragement and lack of understanding of the power of we actually means a stronger me, right? That Ubuntu, right? We don't really got that. I know some of you had touched on individualism in terms of seeing that for Black Americans in America. And that was something that was refreshing coming here in Africa was, you know, you get to see more of that communal that we, right, and no more of that individual. I'm gonna just be myself. I'm gonna be successful. All I care about is my family, right? Also, that lack of knowing who we are in God, and as people all over the world and caring about it, right? So that responsibility of that, and even thinking of it as a responsibility, right? I think just to quickly say this, I think a lot of people, and I'm sure you can attest to this, in America, you know, for people, especially who have never been nowhere, when you see stuff on TV about like some messed up stuff going on in Africa or in some other country, you know, we're like, dang, that's messed up. But it's kind of like, it's not really my problem. You know, I'm just worried about where I am now. And I feel like I'm not saying that you should become Barack Obama and make a whole difference, but, you know, using your gifts to try to do something, maybe even send some money towards that for that cause, or, you know, just using what the gifts that you have to make it better for somebody else, you know, is a responsibility. I feel personally, for me, I believe. So I just feel like that if we all thought that way, we could all move. We could work together in a collective way that we can be more successful. Also, the lack of knowledge of heritage that we talked about, and power of energy transformation that we should also be aware of, right? In this room, I'm feeling positive energy. I'm feeling that energy of you know, impact, and, you know, that makes me to be better, right? And that makes me to start being a better version of myself, and I'm sure for everybody else, right? So that positive energy, if everybody was in here negative and didn't want to talk about nothing, you know, positive, it would change my energy, right? And also the lack of healing to know that who we are is enough. Who we are is enough, and nothing external can define nor change that. You know, no matter how successful we get, whatever career we have, how much money you got, what you're wearing, what you're driving, that has nothing to do with who we are, which are people of love. To me, in my eyes, people of love, people of power, of light, you know, of creativity. And traumatic strongholds from slavery that mentally chains us, and the fear of rejection and acceptance from even people in Africa and vice versa, right? With that fear of maybe I won't be accepted, which I'm speaking from my experience, right? Or I might be rejected because they don't even know me for real. They'll call me a mlungu. I don't know. So that fear of, should I even work with these people? So that is my take on that question, and maybe we can just get one person to briefly answer that, and then We'll do 2 freestyle sessions, and then we'll jump to the last question. Give me my snaps, y'all. What is
that? Sorry. I'm waiting for a sister for Booty to say something. I'm like, I have something to say.
No, I think, maybe I think you've said a lot of everything that is possibly there. And maybe my only addition would be, I think, one of my favorite verses is, my people perish from lack of knowledge. The reason why I like that is because knowledge is a very powerful tool. And I think the only thing that can limit you from connecting with anyone is not knowing enough about them. So I think just that knowing enough, just like pursuing knowledge, I think that's what stops us from connecting, because in as much as, yes, someone has an idea of like who you are, perhaps not even just as a Black American, but just like even a person seeing you on the street, that shouldn't be happening, like if we knew more, we wouldn't be making assumptions about people we don't know anyway, so I just think that like brain development in terms of having more knowledge in your brain is always like, for me, the best part. And then also connecting everything you do to the heart, because everything that you do will flow from it. So it's like a thing of, yes, I mean, I want to get to know Ebony more. So what do I do if I want to get to know Ebony more? I ask the questions that matter. Where do you come from? Who are you? What things limit you? What do you want to do with the world? So yeah, I just think like, let's put away the ego from everyone's perspective and just like work on knowing more about each other. I think that's where we start to connect. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
I like that. All right.
Wait, can I just say something?
Nah,
because I think this is important. I will, because I just want to throw in Marcus Garvey. I think Marcus Garvey made, back during the Civil Rights era and moving forward from like the 60s into the 70s and 80s, right, there was a movement to go back to Liberia. And that was it was stopped, it was ceased, because there was so much anxiety or fear. If we leave the U.S., can we come back? If we go to Africa, will we be accepted? What happens when we want to go back and start a commerce, an exchange of goods and services, right? That fear. And I think this is funny because Bob Marley also talks about Marcus Garvey as well, but yet we don't hear much about Marcus Garvey anymore. He's seen as sort of like the offshoot of what could have or what could have been, but never really. And yet, in the U.S., we have so many Black Americans who feel the need to seek our heritage, but yet don't travel. So there's a disconnect. And I think from these misunderstandings between Black Americans and Africans, because I think this is Africa as a whole, not just for Eswatini, how do we build and again, this is why I go back to the intelligentsia, because this is how it seems a bit classist, because sometimes I get in trouble with these classist ageist statements, but I just have to say them. Like, where is the intelligentsia trying to reconnect our people together? Like, I do feel like there is something that's blocking Africans and Black Americans from having the conversation, because it gets divided on whether or not where we came from specifically, but we know where we came from.
Yeah.
Where's the dialogue? And we know that if we do start making these connections to Africa as a whole, there are benefits and then there are cons. We've seen the cons. We know what happened to Liberia. We know what happened in the DRC. We know what happened in Rwanda. We are seeing what's happening in Ethiopia right now with the xenophobia in South Africa. So we know all these things are happening posed by former colonialists coming into Africa and whatever the U.S. is doing, right? So then how do we make sure that our intentions are positive and good as well? And I think that there's no one trying to really access the statement of, if you want to come back, you can. But just be prepared to be like, you have to work at it. I am working to learn Siswati. Ni funzisa Siswati. That was a little poor, but I'm working at it, right? But no one's working to come to Africa because they're stuck at trying to get this American dream. I got to work this 9 to 5. I got 2 jobs here. I got to make these deliveries. I got to make this dough. If I don't make the dough, grandma don't get fed. If I don't, and it's the same concept here in Eswatini too. But if you don't, and I guess maybe this is for Peace Corps volunteers, maybe there's a privilege that we have to come over here and do this work because we have the intention to do this and we have the ability to take off 2 years of our lives to do this, while others may not. But again, there are other ways to refocus our attention to bridging the gaps. Let's find those ways. Let's have the dialogues. Let's make the exchange happen to where the Bo nurse and the Bo Doctella can come over to the U.S., exchange ideals, and then now we have eager and nurses and doctors wanting to do the work without having to being stressed about coming to work or trying to walk out the door at 3:30 when you know we should be open until 4. So it's these things that I think we should really be working on for a good exchange between our two people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I think we ran out of time with the misconception freestyle session.
Are we sure? I mean, there's like
you
two
ran,
of them.
You ran up our time, John.
Marcus Garvey is important to mention here.
No. I like it.
But I think also with the myths,
with
the myths and the misconceptions, a lot of them were kind of addressed. Yeah. So it's okay.
That was good. So I was gonna say that. So we did address a lot of them. So I guess just one of them that's we didn't really touch on was the misconception. Can I just get a volunteer who wants to do that?
A misconception on what?
Yeah. All Africans are poor. That misconception.
It wouldn't be controversial to say. It wouldn't be. But all Africans are poor.
Address that one for us.
So there's something very interesting that she said earlier about the majority being the poorest class in Southern Africa, when like the minority holds the most amount of wealth. And obviously you know how that happens because that happens through acquisition and acquiring and conquering of land.
Right.
So there's a story that I like to tell to my younger sister whenever we're driving, and she's like, why do these names have Sprout at the end? And so what I found out was when I was having a conversation with one of my elders is that what the settlers used to do is they just draw up land and they'd say, this is Nelspruit, this is my Spruit, this is next to my river, right? So Nelspruit was Nelspruit before, so that's where that was his Spruit, and then it became a whole place that then belonged to them. So if you think about how easy it was for settlers to be able to acquire and get land at the time, and also access to state resources, right? So when, for instance, in South Africa, you had the apartheid government come in, and they had, stipends for other Afrikaner farmers. They had amazing, schools for the Afrikaner learners, and then everything else was underfunded, right? So yes, I would say there are those exceptions, a few where, you do have rich Africans, which is, awesome and great. But you also only start witnessing that deep after they have their freedom and they get liberated. We can talk about how only like 10% of the population is able to get that and acquire that wealth. We can talk about that offline. But also you can tell that systemically, you can't really have a nation of rich Africans because Africa has been plundered. So in as much as you see this depiction, which is far from the truth, because we have phones, we know what the internet is, we don't run around in like jungles all the time, we kind of live like very similar lives, but it's much harder to move up in terms of your social mobility. I would say here in terms of your access, because like I said, all of it is tied to land. So not all Africans are poor, but systemically it is designed for them to stay poor. So maybe that's the right analysis.
Thank you for that. I like that. So we addressed the misconception of thinking that Africans live in huts and hunt wild animals like lions in 2024. We're not doing that, okay? Yeah. No, they're not. All right. I got to say that even for some of my black family members. We ain't doing that over here now.
Yeah. Okay? I had to do the same, too.
I'm telling you.
I saw a giraffe, though. Do you want to talk about that giraffe? That was pretty cool.
And for me, I had to go to like a nature reserve park to see that. It's not like I wish I saw a giraffe walking across, but that's not the way it is.
You can talk about the snake I saw the other night.
Okay, now we can talk about some snakes.
Yeah.
But the other misconception of all African Americans are lazy and shoe people. That's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just feel like
malicious news.
Yeah, it's not true. I again, there's good and bad in anything, and there's good and bad people. But then we can go deep into that. Is there really? You can't just make that label, right, and say something is good or bad. It's so many. I think life is just a gray area within itself. So you can't just make that absolute and say that as well.
No, you can't.
All Africans steal and scam people. We all know that's a myth, a misconception, right? Again, you got good people, you got bad people, and it's not, you just can't do that.
We just
gonna we ain't. And I think sometimes too, when people experience something from one person, then they want to generalize it and say, oh, all of these people like this, and it's that's not right. Also, African Americans have the same privilege as whites in America. So we really talked about that here. We know that that's not true.
No.
That at all, right? All Africans are poor. You beautifully explained that in terms of addressing that misconception. Also, African Americans know their heritage just like African citizens. We addressed that as well early on in our conversation. And we also touched on how colorism does, in fact, exist in Africa as well as other parts of the world in terms of, you're seeing that with people bleaching their skin and, bullying other people who are African or black or whatever, I'm sorry. Black Africans, right, are just like people in America. We're making fun of each other because of our skin tone. If you're darker, if you're lighter, and not just accepting who we are and loving who we are, as we are. So that was the run of the myths and misconceptions freestyle session. We already addressed it. So, wow. I know that we're running out of time, but let me just get to this last question because this is a positive note, and we always want to end on a positive note.
For sure.
So how we talked about all the issues and the problems, but now how can African Americans and Africans help each other moving forward economically, spiritually, socially, and more? How can we help each other moving forward?
Yeah, it's a very packed question. Packed questions because are you asking from the American government standpoint or are you asking from an individual point of view?
However you think.
Yeah,
you go.
I know my mind is now. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Well, give us a short synopsis of what, like maybe something that stands out for you that's like really important for us to move forward. Like whether it's, a healthy these conversations or, maybe us creating a structure or an environment for us to be successful and starting to create businesses with each other, getting into business with each other, the use of technology and how that comes in, just maybe one thing from this side that you think that would help us moving forward.
I find this conversation, I find this question to be hard to answer in light of what's happening within the continent here. Because a part of me says we should walk away and let Africa fix itself and reclaim what is theirs, their resources, right? Let them do what they want to do with cobalt. Let them do what they want to do with their borders. Let them figure out how to build their economy. Yet, I feel like perhaps we should really structure infrastructure we should build better infrastructure for education. Because youth want to learn. And maybe from what I'm seeing from Mbaga, specifically is that there's a need for out-of-school youth to be in school. And there's a need for orphans to be in school, to really have that opportunity to not just stop at Form 2 or Form 3, but to go all the way to Form 5 and Tetra if they so choose to. Because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mm-hmm. And I see so many youth that have so many skills and ideals to share, but yet feel so unable to do so because of funds. Mm-hmm. So I guess, I don't know, making sure that the opportunity for education is secured by the state and paid for by the state. And it's accurate in education. I guess that's my best answer.
It's okay. It was
this question is so much.
Yeah, it is. That was the whole point.
Shame. Yo.
No, I wanted us to start thinking. I wanted our minds to feel like, dang, it's so complex. But I wanted those thoughts to run and to think about it in that way. So that's okay. And I've already touched on, what I think in terms of that conversation, just to put it simply put. And like you were saying, first we have to build that dialogue and bounce those ideas. Because when we have this conversation, it's like, okay, now I know how you think. I know how you think. So now let's come together and figure out how can we be successful. We know the problems. We're aware of the problems. So how would this help both? How... us starting a business, or, if I send, 50 Black Americans over here and we try to do something here in Africa, how would that help Africa to be successful? So for me, I think it's just starting with that, going step by step and really breaking it down, instead of, having these big ambiguous types of goals. Let's just break it down, you simply put, and figure out how we can help each other. You had anything?
Yeah. I just want to say, if we're in a debate competition, I'd probably be like on John's bench. I agree. Because I feel like, I think that, at the end of the day, there needs to be a level of let the people do what they want with what they have. And I think there's this level of, you've got to trust when you walk into a place that the people know it better than you do. And I think that takes a lot of commitment to learning.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you come into someone's home and you say to them, hey, what do you need? You need to let them tell you what they need. And sometimes you think you know better, and maybe you do based on your experience. But you've got to let people here decide.
Exactly.
So that's all I gotta say to
Thank
that,
you.
really.
But let me ask you. So, and I completely agree, right? Letting them be sustainable for themselves.
Yeah.
The white savior thing.
Yeah.
But what if you're in a place where they don't even know what they want, or don't know how to get what they want? Because even personally, where I'm serving, right, you do run into people who don't even know what they want, and their minds, like we were talking about, the cap, they're of course they're intelligent enough to figure out what that is, but maybe they do need somebody who's been somewhere else that look like them, that can encourage them and give them some empowerment and motivation to say, hey, you are great at what you're doing. You have the skills. How about, maybe you can do this, giving them some, like a refresher and some ideas. And people even from Africa that can do that as well in America, for Black Americans. So, yes, help them to figure out themselves. For me, I think, yes, help them figure it out. But sometimes you just need a little encouragement so that, all right, I know what I'm doing, but it's good to have somebody to give me some little encouragement.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really deep, big conversation. And I think that would need another hour of interrogation, like John said, because that's how do you get the legitimacy to inform my decisions? So that's a big chat, because you have this knowledge, but is it legitimate? And how do you know it's legitimate? Because we don't have the same experiences.
Right.
But there's another book I'd like to suggest just before we say bye, and it's Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangaremba. Gives a really good insight into sort of like the context of saviors, and the European kind of commodification in Zambia, though. In Zimbabwe, sorry. So it's a good book to read as well for understanding.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you. Well, that was great. I had another question, but I know we got to wrap up. But it's just just to think in our minds as we move forward. You may not know all of the answers, and wanting to, I'm a big believer in collectivism and just same. Encouraging each other and using what you can. You may not know all the answers, but I at least want to encourage you, for people who may not even know where to go with what they have, because some people are like, hey, it is what it is, so maybe some people you say, okay, we'll leave them and let them figure it out themselves, but what if they just kind of stagnant and just like, it is what it is. So
but so that's why I said it's a big conversation, because I think that's a fault of capitalism. So we don't even, maybe shouldn't go there.
All right. Well, I appreciate it anyway.
Let's get snaps. We need to have another round.
We should.
Yes.
We should. Yes. Okay, well, this has been powerful and amazing. We're officially at the conclusion, y'all, of this discussion. And I just want to thank all of my participants for sharing your thoughts and being a part of this conversation that needed. I feel like this event was more than necessary to have. And for our viewers, we hope that you have enjoyed it as well. Please be a part of the conversation by commenting below, and also share this video. I know that it's a lot of information. You might need to watch it in bits and pieces, and that's okay. But please just share this information and be a part of this conversation. That's the whole point of this. And remember that sparking vital conversations, sharing and spreading the knowledge is the first step to strengthening the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. Again, my name is Ebony Tyson, and we are sending you love all the way from Eswatini, Africa. Let me get